Good morning. My name is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia. We are the ideal community for emerging nonprofit leaders. Our goal is to train the next generation of ethical nonprofit leaders, and the way we do that is through coaching, consulting, as well as forums like these. All right. So, those of you who have been following us, you probably know that we have focused this entire month of February on social enterprise. And when we speak of social enterprise, we realize that nonprofits by nature are social enterprises because they have a social mission, but we're also exploring ways that people can leverage those social assets and actually create ventures, either new companies or new products and services in order to make money so that they're not necessarily dependent on grant income. Over the month, we have shared with you the basics, showing you how to develop your concept, showing you how to research a concept, looking at things like your business model and your value proposition and how to pitch your products and services. And we even had Mark Lane talking about how you can structure your enterprise from a legal perspective as well as from a business perspective. And today we're going to have a panel discussion talking to people who've been there, done that, taught that, and all of that good stuff. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to let our panelists come to us in their own way. And we'll start with you, Brady. Uh, I called you Brady. Is it Brady?
It is Brady like the bunch.
Now you're dating yourself. Okay. Yeah, forgive me, Brady. I was gonna call you Brandy. I'm like, no, that I had a little dissonant moment there, right?
No problem, Valerie.
Okay, and the good thing is we can edit this little awkwardness out of out of the video when it comes on. But at any rate, will you come to us in your own way and just give us a little background about yourself and how you got into social enterprise?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I love talking social enterprise. I've been in this space for 15 years. So when I was invited, I was so excited to get a chance to talk. So, but my own background, just a bit. I kind of in my early career time, I was in the pizza business. So I was a small
Really?
business owner. Yeah, tossing the pies, and
Mhm.
um, and then in 2002, I decided to move from Central Ohio. And I moved to Chicago to attend Moody Bible Institute, and there I studied urban ministry. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, so that's how I got to Chicago from Central Ohio, from Amish country, and
Mhm.
I after Moody, I took a job at a mission that provides housing and food for individuals. In particular, I ran their men's 6-month program, and I would have it was a residential program, so men would come through the programming, and then at the
Mhm.
end, the goal was to match them with the job. And what I witnessed there was just some difficulty matching individuals who had faced barriers in their life to career opportunities. So about that time, a friend started to knock on my door and say, "Hey, I'm working at this new thing called Cleanslate. Would you be interested?" And so about
Mhm.
after of a year of harassment, I left the mission work and came to Cleanslate, where that's exactly what we do. We seek to marry job seekers who have barriers to employment. So I've been on board with the organization with Cara Collective and Cleanslate since 2007.
Wow. Brenda, can you share your background?
Yes, good morning. It's good to see both of you, two esteemed leaders in the world, in the work around social impact. So, Sweet Beginnings is a social impact enterprise business in North London.
Brenda, I'm sorry, do you have two instances on?
I hear that too, but no, I don't.
Maybe it's me. Let,
Well, let's see.
uh,
Maybe I do.
I think it might have been David. I saw it when the echo, like his little thing was flashing, and he
oh,
just he
okay.
just logged off again. So maybe
Okay.
he has some technical challenges.
Okay, awesome. And as I said before, the good thing is we're editing this for Can TV.
Oh, good. So, Sweet Beginnings was launched in 2014, 5 and 6, when we were looking to create jobs for men and women in our community who had been just as impacted and were having incredible difficulty securing employment. And so back in the day, as my colleagues know, that there have never been wide open doors for people who have actually served their time. And I just think it's a shame, when people have served their time, then they've honestly served their time, and let's give them an opportunity to fully reintegrate back into society. And to do that includes a job, and so we looked at a lot of different ideas, Valerie, as you know, and eventually landed on this concept of honeybees and generating a business utilizing urban honey and infusing that honey into our skincare products under the Be Love brand. And we are, I think, 16 years old now, which is it's pretty stunning for social enterprises in general to have a shelf life like that, along with Cleanslate. I have so much respect for their work as well. So it says something about our commitment to serving these amazing individuals who turn out to be incredible employees if given the opportunity. So and I know that I'm not going to be able to stay with you the full hour. I have a staff meeting that starts at 10:30. But Valerie, for you, what can I say? It's important to be here to support and share our lessons from the field. So tell me, how much time you want me to take up, and I'll do that.
Yeah. The way I had this structured initially was to, throw out questions to each of you and let you run through them. But I realized too that, you have very limited time. And my question to you, Brenda, is there any particular thing, any particular message you would like to get out as it relates to social enterprise, some of your experiences? And while you're thinking, I just want to say thank you. Brady reminded me, he says, and he asked me today, well, how long have you been doing a podcast? I said, well, since 2015.
Yeah.
I said, as a matter of fact, Brenda was my very, very first guest.
I remember that over at the library. That's right.
My goodness. We've come a long way.
We have come a long way. I think there's so many lessons learned, and I know that Brady, you can share many. I think it's important to be clear about what your real objective is. Is the work around what is the driver? What is the motivation? Is it in fact to create work experience and then work with a board of directors or stakeholders that really are on board with what your vision is? I think that we struggled for years to decide, we had big, fat, audacious goals at the very beginning, thinking that we would be this wildly profitable, social enterprise that would, in fact, generate funds to support our nonprofit work. At the end of the day, what we learned is that profitability for us, and we have a different model, from Cara, from Cleanslate, but for us, there's seasonality to our profitability. And that at the end of the day, we want to have a solid, sustainable business model so that we can, in fact, hire men and women to work with us and to gain the work experience they need to sort of retool, reshift, and reestablish a work history that will make them competitive. And that is how we are beginning to define some success. It isn't necessarily your bottom line. It's a combination of all. You have to have a sustainable business, but you have to be clear, what is the purpose? And if it's solely to create a revenue stream, then I would say you'd have to give that a second thought, right? Because it takes time to get there as well.
Yeah.
I'll pause there.
Indeed. So what is your legal structure? Do you have a separate business, or are you doing a product line within your nonprofit organization?
I think we started off long before there were all the wonderful legal structures available for social enterprises today. And we just haven't felt deeply compelled to change the structure at this point, right? But for us at the time, we created Sweet Beginnings as a wholly owned subsidiary of the North Lawndale Employment Network. And therefore, Sweet Beginnings is a limited liability corporation. Today, there are B Corps, there's L3s, there are all kinds of other options that people can strive for. And had to do it again, we probably would have considered that. But this time, Sweet Beginnings is still recognized as a disregarded tax entity. As long as we are advancing the mission of the parent organization, which is the North Lawndale Employment Network, the social enterprise is advancing the mission, and therefore it's not to compete in any other way, right? That's the only reason, is that we're hiring men and women that have been justice impacted.
Okay, awesome. So when you say disregarded entity, can you explain to our audience what that means?
Sure. What that means is we don't have the, can you still see me, by the way? Because I lost visual of you guys.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I think that what that means is we're not taxed as a traditional business, because which gives us a little bit of an advantage, because we're actually doing nonprofit work, although we're structured as a for-profit business. And so we are established as a for-profit, but because there's the social purpose of advancing the parent organization, we're not recognized as having to pay taxes. I think if we were wildly, generating revenue, then in fact, we probably, the government could come after you at any moment and go, y'all are doing so well, we won't tax you now. But that hasn't been the challenge yet.
That would be a wonderful challenge to have, I tell you. I tell you.
It would be. But I think, what's important to note is we've actually hired over 500, close to 550 men and women since our inception. And the great news, and I'm sure that, Brady, you guys experience the same, is that our recidivism levels are incredibly low, much lower than the standard for the state of Illinois. With less than 10% of our folks have actually returned to incarceration. So it says a lot about giving and investing in people that need an opportunity, and to work. Serving time shouldn't force you to live in a life of poverty. And that's essentially what we're doing, is creating this level of folk who are forever churning in and out of poverty because of the stigma of having a criminal record.
Okay, that is awesome. Now, I understand too, at one point you were looking to work with formerly incarcerated people, helping them start their own businesses. Is that still part of your model?
We do, and we've had a number of people that we've been fortunate to see launch their own businesses. There's a gentleman that has a restaurant on the South Side that is called Ooh Wee. He had Ooh Wee Sweet Tea. Are you familiar with them? And now he's expanded to a restaurant. He's doing really, really well. There are lots of folks that have started off and explored their vision of having a business. It's not a formal process that we have, but we're hoping to get back to that through our partnership with other business organizations that are in North Lawndale. But we really want to make sure that if that's the path that folks want to go, that we can support them in that. And we know that we've got to connect them with you too.
Awesome. I would definitely be willing to help.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Val. That would be awesome.
Okay. And I realized that you and Brady from time to time work together. Do you ever get together and kind of share war stories, so to speak? I see Brady kind of laughing.
No, I'll say this though, so once in a while there'll be some cross referrals, but Brenda, you probably don't remember this, but when I was brand new at Cara and Cleanslate, I remember the Social Enterprise Alliance had a when their get-togethers, I think it was at the I think it was the Willis Tower, and you spoke. It was like my first exposure really to Social Enterprise Alliance, and hearing somebody from outside of just the Cara Collective. And I always remember a couple of your lines, but one thing you said, don't chase down the media because they'll be there before you want them, or something like that. I remember you making one of those comments. But we have a lot of respect for your work and had admired, your effort over the decades.
It's certainly mutual, and I think we probably should commiserate more often, Valerie. We certainly share a lot of some of the similar challenges, but we also have a lot of the same heart for the work. And quite frankly, I think that the Cara Collective, and I'll have to throw Sweet Beginnings, we're some of the best social enterprise models in the country. And what's interesting is that we have a retail strategy through Sweet Beginnings by selling Beloved honey and skincare products. And Cleanslate, of course, has a it's more of a what do you guys call it? It's not a retail model. It's a
service model.
A service model. Yeah. So I mean, and so what's great is we having us together, we have similar challenges, but different challenges. And I think that that's what's kind of powerful about today is that people will be able to learn a little bit about those different models.
Yeah. And then when it comes to challenges, I'd be very interested in hearing from you both. What have been some of the challenges of doing a social enterprise beyond, a nonprofit?
Go ahead.
You take first. Oh, I mean, there's lots of challenges. I'm sure that both Brenda and I have, witnessed over the years. Lots of, and one of the first things I remember when I became managing director back in the end of 2010 was our CFO telling me that Cleanslate had an intercompany debt back to our parent org of $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, I didn't think to ask that question during the interview. And so, like Brenda said earlier, is finding that correct alignment from the board all the way down to your frontline team is essential. But it's also very, very challenging to do this, because as new staff members come in, they often have worked in one sector or the other. They ever worked kind of in traditional nonprofit work, or maybe they worked on the business side, and bringing them together and finding that alignment for the purpose of the business and what it's seeking to accomplish has been a bit challenging. But there's a list of challenges I think we could go through. Brenda, I'll give you a shot.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's certainly one. For us, I think after you get your legal structure, you get your governance structure, you have an idea of who you're hiring and all of that. For us, it's being taken seriously as a business when it comes to being a priority. You're a small fish in a big pond. And so for us, distribution was a real challenge. And so until we decided we would take on our own, buy a van and start doing our own distribution to stores, because when you're as small as we are, you just don't rise to the level of importance to some of your other contractors. And we found that over and over again. So if you have a contractor, a third party that's supposed to be responsible for distribution and the presentation of your product in the marketplace on shelves, I would go into a Mariano's and see that there was sticky honey, or that all the labels weren't out facing, right? And you're like, wait a minute, how come they're not taking care of this? I shouldn't be concerned. I'm paying these people. But what we're paying them is a big deal to us, but it's not in the scheme of what they're getting from other folks. And so you become less important to them. And so I think that's important. Supply chain management, and just really looking at your cost of goods sold and having to negotiate prices so that you can still keep your margins at 50% so that it's viable in the marketplace. So those are the kinds of things that we ran into, as just sort of on an operations standpoint.
Yeah, and I'll double down on that. And you're 100% right. Often when nonprofits have been around for a while, they have a development mindset for sales. They have an accounting system that really serves a traditional nonprofit. And so there's not cost accounting. You don't have those tools to make those decisions as a as a in-market business, we're in a different sector. We're not competing against other nonprofits. We're competing, like you said, against other
Retailers.
firms. Yeah, retailers, or we're competing against landscaping firms or sanitation
Yes.
firms. And so to have those tools as an operator so you can make those decisions, that is a muscle and an investment that a nonprofit would need to do. I think one other growth challenge is, again, if you're if you're an existing nonprofit, is the growth challenge. So if you have an existing nonprofit that may be mature at this point, it's not on this big growth spurt, and you start a for-profit, it's going to go through an acceleration phase if it's a healthy business. And so as Cleanslate grew, for example, the number of participants we needed to work on our crews grew exponentially beyond what our recruitment team back at Cara Collective was prepared to deliver on. And so now we have a huge labor shortage, and all the work that had to go around to properly structure our organization and make some tough decisions, sometimes about saying no to work, which is hard. Just operating a business,
really
you always want to
is.
say yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever feel yourselves, and this could be for either of you, to be a little schizophrenic? Because to me, having worked in the nonprofit and now, running nonprofit Utopia, it's a different mindset, running a business versus, well, nonprofits are businesses, but running a for-profit versus a nonprofit. Do you find yourself trying to, switch mentality, so to speak, from time to time?
I think that's an interesting question, because I was thinking while Brady was speaking about the fact that we're competing in the market. We're not, and I think we are competing sometimes for us with other social enterprise businesses, for people that have discretionary funds that want to buy a gift or something that is purpose driven, right? So you have competition for people who are moved to purchase things from a social purpose point of view. And then there's just apples to apples. I want a really good lotion. Is this the one I want to go with? And so you have to compete on the shelf. So there is this, it is interesting to sort of maybe frame it as schizophrenic, because you do have to understand, first and foremost, no matter what your product is, no matter what your service is, it has to compete in the market. There's no, oh, you're a nonprofit, so you can produce at a lesser quality, or you can deliver anything. It has to be above or better, a better, or even, not even online in many cases, but above what the expectation is in the market. So it does force you to have to think and bring folks on that do have a business sense, but still rooted very strongly in your triple bottom line mission, which is, people, planet, product.
What?
Yeah, and I would say some similar thing. We had some research done by the University of Chicago. They surveyed our customers, our prospects, and honestly, customers that we could never secure, and they came back with a very similar theme. Or she came out with a very similar theme that our service quality and the price have to be comparable to our competitors, and then our mission would sometimes be that tiebreaker. Right. Often budgets, they don't have the flexibility, like, hey, I'm going to pay an extra 10 or 20% because it's from a social-based business. Sometimes there are those, very unique, ideal customers, but there's not enough of them to sustain sustain your business.
Do you think some of that discipline that you're having to have, for the for-profit businesses, do you think that that's actually helping your nonprofit to run more efficiently?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't help but take the best practices from both, and, as I like to say, cross-pollinate, right? So absolutely. I think that's sort of my role is to make sure that we are taking the best of both to really do more. And we need to do more until our country changes the way that we lock folk up and the way that we reintegrate them back into society. And so with that, I'm going to have to hop. The staff meeting is starting. It's so good to see you, Val. It's always good to see you too, Brady. And we should commiserate a little more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All righty.
Let's see.
So
how
Brady.
to exit. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Bye-bye.
You got it? All right. Bye-bye. So Brady, what are some of the challenges that you have seen other nonprofits have? You also teach, right? So you've had a chance to see a whole bunch of different social enterprises. So you can share some of the experiences you've seen others have.
Yeah, I would say in one sense we're all teachers. I am not a teacher by trade. I'll be a guest lecturer here and there, but
Okay.
I think there's, and Brenda talked about it a bit in the, at the beginning and then this last segment, is that sometimes nonprofits think we'll start a social enterprise and it'll be the panacea of our funding challenges. And like I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, when I took over Cleanslate, and it was only at that point 4 or 5 years old, it had $1 million debt back to our parent nonprofit. So it was bleeding its operating capital.
Wow.
So actually creating harm to the organization. And I think, one of the challenges is for there to be alignment around the purpose of the social enterprise. And sometimes the purpose is a razor blade, in the sense like it needs to be sustainable, and we need to be creating jobs in our case,
Mhm.
as a workforce development social enterprise. And so sometimes that purpose is so narrow, it does create a lot of discipline around business
Mhm.
acumen, constantly looking at your financial, but constantly looking at your program dashboard, how many jobs you're creating, what is their tenure, what is their placement rate within our organization. So there's some critical things you pick up.
Mhm.
And I think another mistake, and Brenda touched on this as well, is, and she said it better, I'm going to say it, but hiring somebody to run your business, who has the business acumen but are rooted in the mission. So
Mm.
one mistake is nonprofits will elevate somebody on their team who may not have the skills, experience, and don't necessarily understand the market that they're walking into. And that's where mistakes are made. And just like all small businesses, the majority of small businesses, as we know, they fail. And that's probably multiplied within the context of a social enterprise, because there's greater costs. As we know, in operating a social enterprise, there's a social cost. About a third of our
Mhm.
overall costs are just because we are a social enterprise. So I think that's another area, is like you got to hire the correct talent in
Mhm.
order to lead and understand both the mission but also the marketplace.
Okay. That's interesting. I've seen small groups, right? They're doing wonderful work, and then they might go and buy a building, right? Or try to get in real estate development, which is, I guess, a form of social enterprise. And they get so caught up in this new development that they let their day-to-day operations just suffer. So I can imagine you have the same issues from time to time with some of the social enterprises.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think there's always a challenge with boards. So while
Mhm.
boards are great and they can be an asset, most boards are composed of business people. If we just kind of
Mhm.
do the demographic scan of boards, they're usually
Mhm.
entrepreneurs or leaders in industry. And once you have a business in house of a nonprofit, they see that as a shiny object. And so when
Uh-huh.
there's more opportunities, social enterprise in itself can be very distracting from the board if they don't understand how it fits and serves the mission of the organization. So whether it's chasing real estate development or launching new business concepts to grow your impact in your work, I think it's important to always come back, like, what are we doing this for? What's the purpose of it? And setting up metrics to gauge the success of a
Mhm.
piloted business that would determine a green light or red light at some point in the future.
Okay. Sorry about that. So you talked a lot about metrics. You also mentioned dashboards. How, what are some of the things you might put on your dashboard for a social enterprise?
That's a good question, Valerie. If I flip into, we use Salesforce as our database with our organization. And so I have two key dashboards I look at. One
Mhm.
is a financial dashboard. So I'm seeing revenue performance, gross margins. I'm seeing for each business line, it's direct margin. So I
Mm.
can make decisions around which lines are the most profitable. I see which lines are creating the most work hours. So as a workplace social workforce development social enterprise, it's important that we're creating jobs, because that's why we were stood up for, was to create
Mhm.
jobs for our participants coming through our programming. And so I carefully watch those our business lines to see which ones are creating the most hours and are they performing financially optimally. Those are some key things to look at. But even going back, every year we renew our business contracts. So having the cost accounting in place, so I can look at last year's contract and say, you know, did we make money on this? How much money did we make on it? Have costs increased? And so when we present our next proposal, that we're not making decisions that are done in a vacuum that would cause us to lose money and therefore risking jobs and our mission. If you look at another dashboard, our participant performance dashboard, you'll see things like total jobs created. But one important thing I like to look at is positive outcome from our programming. So Cleanslate, it's under the umbrella of Cara Collective, and Cara's doing our programming for our participants. The question I often want to know is like, so they come to Cleanslate and they work in a transitional job. Our goal while they're working on that job is to eventually move on to permanent employment in the private sector. So the question is what percent of those individuals who are showing up on our doorstep for work at Cleanslate are exiting in a positive manner? And so that is something we watch. Obviously, there's macroeconomic things in play. When there's right now a very tight labor market, we're seeing a lot of placement and a lot of positive outcomes simply because employers are starved for talent. And much like Brenda said, this is a great opportunity for those who are focusing on inclusive employment and want to hire individuals who have a variety of backgrounds and work experiences. This is the time to do it. It's a time to tap into that strong talent pipeline that we have in Chicago and across the nation of people who are coming out of incarceration.
Okay, awesome. And then when you talked about cost accounting, do you have one system for your social enterprise and another system for the nonprofit, or are the two systems integrated?
Yeah, so so each business unit can see its own. We have a fabulous financial team, so I should say that they do a lot of work behind the scenes, and really make what we do possible. But each business unit has its own financial dashboard. So Cara, so our training program, our recruitment program, all would have their financial dashboards. Our other social enterprise, Cara Connects, our mission-driven staffing firm, has its own financial dashboards and program dashboard, along with our affiliate arm or our national expansion arm, Cara Plus. Same thing; it has its own dashboards. And this is something that we review. We review our dashboards in leadership team meetings and executive meetings on a regular basis. So we how do you know you're successful in achieving your financial goals or your missional goals is because you have something you're aiming for and you're comparing against and you're reviewing it regularly.
Okay, awesome. And then when you look at, I guess, the interactions between, I guess, your board and your social enterprise, that doesn't really impact you, does it? Because you only have one board and the board oversees the nonprofit.
Yeah, so we have board committees. So the Cara Collective board serves as Cleanslate's board as well. Just like Brenda described her entity, we're a disregarded entity of a 501c3. So Cleanslate is a separate LLC, along with our other entities are all LLCs of the Cara Collective.
Okay. And Brady, I'm going to warn you, I don't have my computer plugged in. It's focused. we're running on fumes right about now. So
no problem.
We might end up having to cut this a little bit short, but I want to keep going. If we end up cutting off abruptly, again, this is going to be edited for Can TV, and all these awkward moments will will come out. But I'm really, really enjoying what you have to say. So if you are starting for the first time, what would you recommend for nonprofits who've never done this and this is their first rodeo? What would you suggest that they do first?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, and again, we touched on it earlier, is ensure there's alignment across the organization on the purpose of the social enterprise. Number two, as you begin to build your team for the social enterprise, again, ensure that you have the correct business acumen, that you understand the market that it's going to operate in and who its competitors are. Be aware of things like, is the industry full of shady players? So in our sector, we have a lot of people who pay their employees as 1099s, or they pay them other means. It's just kind of the practice of the industry that we're in. And so the lower barrier to entry to the work, typically the more shady players you're going to have to compete against. So,
Wow.
that's something to be, certainly aware of. If you're launching a new business, it is taxing for the entire organization, to figure out how to make this thing fit. It's a lot of work from your executive team and a board sponsor to pull this off. And then it's extra important. We learned this along the way. We launched 2 other social enterprises that we have since shuttered. Is that you have, a piloting phase with metrics, so you can determine, is it a red light or green light at some point. I think sometimes nonprofits get themselves in trouble. They launch a business, they're excited about it, but they may not have the financial tools in place to monitor its health and its performance. Or they may not be monitoring like program outcomes related to its participants. And so that's something that we made a mistake early on. We launched a social enterprise called 180. It grew to about a $4 million business, but we end up closing it in 2014 for a number of reasons, but some are because it didn't have the right leadership. It didn't pivot quick enough into new markets as the work that it was doing changed. But when we launched a second social enterprise out of Cleanslate in 2013, Chapter 2, it was a book and media collection business, and we resold that stuff online. We had clear metrics around cash flow positive goals, around job creation goals, that when we got to the 18-month mark, we decided to close it, even though we collected 1 million books and did $350,000 in revenue. It just wasn't a fit for what we wanted to do. And so we closed it down with less fanfare and less struggle and less reputation damage than we did with 180 properties.
Okay. All righty. I just got a message from my computer that I'm going to be shut down very soon. As much as I'd like to continue the conversation, I don't want you to be caught mid-sentence.
No problem.
I really, really do thank you, Brady, for coming out. I thank you, David, for coming out. I understand you had some technical problems. That's why we didn't bring you up on stage. But I'd really like to have, you come back, David, and we can have a conversation about your business. And Brady, let's keep in touch. I really could see you coming back, from time to time and sharing some of your insights. You got a lot to share as it relates to social enterprise and experiences with nonprofits.
For sure. My pleasure, Valerie. Thanks for having me.
All righty. You take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. I just got a message. My machine is getting ready to cut off. Facebook. Clear path. Brady. Oh, Lord, help me. Brady, thank you. I'm so sorry.